In a study that followed over 900 older adults for nearly 7 years, researchers found something that surprised even the people running it. The participants who consumed the most extra virgin olive oil had a 28% lower risk of dying from dementia-related causes compared to those who consumed the least EAOs, and their cognitive test scores, measured repeatedly over the study period, declined at a noticeably slower rate as they aged. Same age, same general population, different amount of one specific food in their daily diet, and a measurably different trajectory for how their brains held up over time. Today we're breaking down exactly what's inside extra virgin olive oil that produces this effect, the specific mechanisms in your brain it targets, and why not all olive oil on a grocery shelf actually delivers it. To understand why this works, you have to understand what's actually happening inside an aging brain in the first place. Two processes drive most of what we recognize as cognitive decline: chronic low-grade inflammation inside brain tissue, called neuroinflammation, and the gradual accumulation of damaged proteins that your brain's cleanup systems fail to clear out fast enough. Most famously, a protein called beta amyloid, which clumps together into plaques that interfere with normal neuron communication. Both of these processes happen slowly, silently, for years before any symptom becomes noticeable. And both of them, it turns out, are directly influenced by specific compounds found in extra virgin olive oil. The first compound worth understanding is called oleocanthal. It's the substance responsible for that distinctive, peppery, throat-catching sensation you feel when you taste a high-quality, extra virgin olive oil. That sensation is actually oleocanthal activating the same receptor pathway that ibuprofen activates, which is why researchers first got curious about it in the first place. Laboratory studies have found that oleocanthal produces measurable anti-inflammatory effects in brain tissue at levels achievable through normal dietary consumption, not megadoses. Since chronic neuroinflammation is one of the two central drivers of cognitive aging we just covered, a compound that consistently dampens that inflammatory signal meal after meal over years is doing real preventative work, not treating a symptom, but reducing the pressure on the underlying process. The second compound is oleuropein, one of the primary polyphenols in extra virgin olive oil, and this one connects directly to the amyloid problem. Research using both animal models and cell studies has found that oleuropein appears to interfere with the way amyloid proteins clump together into the plaques associated with cognitive decline, and separately appears to support the activity of enzymes responsible for breaking down amyloid that has already started to accumulate. This is a genuinely different mechanism than the anti-inflammatory effect of oleocanthal. It's not calming down inflammation, it's directly interfering with one of the physical processes believed to drive long-term cognitive decline. There's a third piece to this that ties back to something we've covered before on this channel: autophagy, your body's cellular cleanup process. Several of the polyphenols found in extra virgin olive oil, oleuropein among them, have been shown in research to activate autophagy pathways specifically within brain tissue. Given that impaired cellular cleanup is directly linked to the buildup of the same damaged proteins responsible for cognitive decline, a food that actively supports your brain's own clearance system, rather than just reducing new damage, represents a meaningfully different kind of protection. Proactive maintenance, not just damage control. Put these three mechanisms together, and you get a compound-rich food doing three distinct jobs simultaneously: calming the chronic inflammation that damages neurons over time, physically interfering with the protein clumping associated with decline, and supporting the cellular cleanup process responsible for clearing out damage that's already occurred. This is almost certainly why studies tracking real dietary patterns, not laboratory supplements, keep finding this same protective association. It's not one mechanism doing all the work, it's several mechanisms reinforcing each other at once. This layered effect also helps explain something researchers noticed when they compared olive oil directly against other dietary fats in cognitive studies. Populations following Mediterranean-style eating patterns, where olive oil replaces butter and other saturated fats as the primary cooking fat, consistently show slower rates of cognitive decline than populations eating similar total fat but from different sources. When researchers tried to isolate why, the difference didn't come down to fat quantity or even the ratio of saturated to unsaturated fat alone. Diets high in other unsaturated fats, like those from certain seed oils, didn't produce the same protective association nearly as strongly. The polyphenol content appears to be doing a meaningful share of the work, not just the fat profile itself, which is part of why researchers now specifically separate olive oil as a source of monounsaturated fat from extra virgin olive oil as a source of both healthy fat and a dense polyphenol payload when designing these studies. There's also a structural piece worth understanding, because it explains why these effects show up more in some brain regions than others. The hippocampus, the brain region most responsible for forming new memories, and one of the first regions to show measurable shrinkage in age-related cognitive decline, appears to be particularly sensitive to both chronic inflammation and oxidative stress, two of the exact processes these olive oil compounds target. Imaging studies looking at long-term Mediterranean diet adherence have found that higher olive oil intake correlates with better preserved hippocampal volume in older adults, compared to matched individuals following diets lower in these polyphenol compounds. This regional specificity is one of the more compelling pieces of evidence connecting the mechanism to an actual physical, measurable outcome, rather than just a correlation with a cognitive test score. Here's where this gets more specific and more important if you actually want to see this effect for yourself. The research showing these benefits is consistently tied to extra virgin olive oil, specifically, not olive oil in general, and the distinction matters enormously. Extra virgin olive oil is extracted purely through mechanical pressing, without heat or chemical processing, which preserves the polyphenol compounds we just covered. Refined olive oil and the generic olive oil, or light olive oil, labels you'll often see on cheaper products, go through processing that strips out most of these same compounds. You're left with the fat content, but very little of the actual protective chemistry. Studies measuring polyphenol content across different olive oil grades have found differences of 10 times or more between high-quality extra virgin oils and refined versions, which means two people can both be eating olive oil and getting almost entirely different biological effects. Freshness matters here too, in a way that surprises most people. These polyphenol compounds degrade over time, and with exposure to light and heat, meaning an extra virgin olive oil that's been sitting on a shelf for a year, especially in a clear bottle under store lighting, may have lost a meaningful percentage of the compounds responsible for the brain benefits we've been discussing, even if the label still technically says extra virgin. Harvest date, rather than just a generic expiration date, is actually a more reliable freshness indicator. And oils stored in dark glass or tin, away from heat, retain their polyphenol content noticeably longer. There's also a practical question worth answering directly. Does cooking with it destroy these benefits? The research here is more reassuring than most people expect. While very high, prolonged heat does degrade some polyphenol content, extra virgin olive oil actually has a relatively high smoke point and reasonable heat stability for normal home cooking temperatures. Studies simulating typical sautéing and light cooking have found that a meaningful portion of the polyphenol content survives the process. That said, using it uncooked, drizzled over vegetables or bread, or as a salad dressing base, does preserve the highest possible concentration of these compounds, which is part of why traditional Mediterranean dietary patterns, the same populations these long-term studies are largely drawn from, use it heavily in exactly that uncooked context. It's worth being honest about what this research does and doesn't show. This is observational and mechanistic evidence, meaning we can see the biological pathways at work in laboratory and cell studies, and we can see a strong, consistent association in populations who consume more of it over long periods. But this isn't the same as a randomized controlled trial proving that adding olive oil to any individual diet will produce a guaranteed cognitive outcome. The strength of the evidence comes from how consistently these findings appear across different research methods, pointing at the same mechanisms, not from a single definitive study, but it's also not a case of one small study getting overhyped. This is one of the more consistently replicated dietary findings in cognitive aging research over the past 2 decades. What's genuinely interesting about this particular food, compared to a lot of the more dramatic claims that circulate about brain health, is how unremarkable the actual intervention is. This isn't a rare compound, an expensive supplement, or a complicated protocol. It's a food that's already a normal part of many people's kitchens, being used incorrectly, either the wrong grade, too old, or in too small a quantity to meaningfully move the needle on polyphenol intake. The studies showing the strongest cognitive protection generally involve daily use in the range of 2 to 3 tablespoons, used consistently as a primary cooking and dressing fat, not as an occasional garnish. If you're looking to actually apply this, the practical version is simple. Prioritize genuine extra virgin olive oil, ideally with a harvest date rather than just an expiration date, stored away from light and heat, and use it as your primary fat for cooking and dressing rather than an occasional addition. None of that requires a diet overhaul or an expensive supplement stack. It requires swapping what's likely already in your kitchen for a version of it that actually delivers the compounds responsible for the effect you're after. The bigger takeaway here goes beyond just this one food. Cognitive aging isn't a single switch that flips. It's the slow accumulation of inflammation and unrepaired cellular damage, compounding quietly over years before it becomes noticeable. Which means the most effective interventions aren't usually dramatic, one-time fixes. They're small, consistent inputs, repeated daily, that shift those underlying processes just slightly in your favor, meal after meal for years. This particular food happens to be one of the better studied examples of exactly that kind of intervention. If this changed how you think about what's sitting in your kitchen right now, subscribe for more breakdowns of the real science behind aging and brain health. Not the surface level advice, the mechanisms actually running